Hey everybody, today I'm going to give you a quick history and origin behind the phrase flying by the seat of your pants. Well, I say I'm going to try to make it quick because it's a little bit longer than I normally do, so if you don't have time to watch it right now, be sure to hit the save button and come back and watch it later because it is worth it. It's very interesting. I'm going to speak a little faster than I normally do, so that's hopefully I'll speed this up for you. It all starts with a gentleman named Douglas Corrigan. He was born January 22nd, 1907, and he was an Irish-American aviator who gained fame for his solo transatlantic flight in 1938. Early on in his life, Corrigan got hooked on flying. After visiting an airfield and taking a ride in a plane, he knew that this is where he wanted to be. After taking flying lessons, Douglas worked as an aircraft mechanic. He even ended up working for a company that was asked to build Charles Lindbergh's plane, the Spirit of St. Louis, that was used to make his historic flight across the ocean. Douglas assembled the plane's wing and also installed the instrument panel and the gas tanks. After Lindbergh's historic flight in 1927, Douglas set his sights on getting his own pilot's license, which he did in 1929, 2 years later. Now, as I mentioned, Corrigan gained international attention in 1938 when he filed a flight plan to fly from New York to California. However, on July 17, 1938, he took off from Floyd Bennett Field in Brooklyn, New York, and instead of heading west, he headed east, confusing everybody at the airport. 28 hours later, he landed in Dublin, Ireland. With officials scratching their heads on just why he was there with no paperwork or any other documentation that showed he was even allowed to make the flight that he did, he told them that he got there by having a defective compass. And when they looked inside the plane, they could kind of see why. There was no instruments. All he had was a compass. Initially, they were not happy with him, but with the Irish loving the good tall tale that they do, as word got out about this hapless hero, his unauthorized flight across the Atlantic Ocean captured the imagination of the public and earned him the nickname Wrong Way Corrigan, garnering him worldwide fame at this point. Side note, Wrong Way Corrigan in and of itself became a well-used phrase for many, many years forward to bestow upon anybody who got hopelessly lost. Now, you may be asking yourself, really? Really? How do you make the mistake of going to Ireland instead of California? Well, like I told you before, he initially said that his wrong way trip was due to a faulty compass. And despite suspicions that his wrong way journey was intentional, until his passing in 1995, Corrigan never wavered from his story that it was just an honest mistake. So why did they suspect that his trip was intentional? Well, mostly because he had made it fully known that that's what he wanted to do for many years prior, filing paperwork over and over again to try to get his piece of junk plane approved for the flight, which they never did. Eventually, they did, however, okay his plane for travel from the east to the west coast. Now, I'm not sure what to make of that, because if a plane goes down, I'd much rather have it be over an ocean than possibly cities or people's houses. Okay, quick backstory on his plane, because this is where our phrase today comes from. Douglas was using a single-engine 1929 Curtiss Robin OX-5 monoplane that had been essentially scrapped. He paid the equivalent in today's dollars of about $5,000 for it. For years, he would work on the plane in hopes of getting it approved, but the inspectors still saw it as a junk heap, which it was. It really was. So you think to yourself, the plane couldn't have been that bad. I'll give you an idea how bad it was by jumping forward into his historic flight. First off, when it took off from New York, it had no controls. He only had this little compass to basically do his guidance by, which they kind of frowned upon. You need controls. Not that there was a ton of controls back then, but they at least thought a few of them were essential, especially if you were going to try to fly across the ocean. And then there was the small gas leak. A gas leak that became a big gas leak during his fateful flight, spilling gas onto the floor and around his feet and filling the cockpit with toxic fumes. Not great. This is his plane. His life relies on this. It got so bad during the flight that he had to take a screwdriver and poke a hole through the bottom of the plane to let the gas escape. And he even had to do that on a certain side, so when the gas came out, it did hit a hot exhaust pipe and then make the plane explode. And minus the gas leak, this is where the phrase flying by the seat of your pants comes from. It starts as the situation where the pilot has no instruments to use or to fly by, basically leaving the pilot with nothing to go by except the feel of the aircraft through the plane seat to get him to where he wanted to go, and thus flew by nothing but the seat of his pants. So that is what it means, that you use your instincts to tell you what to do in a new or difficult situation rather than following a plan or relying on your equipment. After returning to the United States, Corrigan was met with a hero's welcome. He was worldwide famous at this point. Um, he had a ticker tape parade that went down Broadway that was bigger than Charles Lindbergh's. Over 1 million people showed up to welcome him back. He got to meet with President Roosevelt, gifted a watch that ran backwards, and I think he ended up even sponsoring the company that made those as kind of a novelty. He was elected to the Liars Club of Burlington, Wisconsin, my home state. I didn't even know they had that. And even wrote a book on his experience called That's My Story. So that's important. That where he got the title is his pat answer. Whenever anyone asked if he intentionally meant to fly to Dublin, he would say, "That's my story." This is just great. And he actually ended up even starring as himself when the movie was made, and the movie was called The Flying Irishman. So now if you're wondering if he ever got punished for doing the flight that he did, whether it was intentional or unintentional, yes, he did. He got a 5-day suspension of his pilot's license. That's it. So, and that also happens to be the exact amount of time that it took him to get back from Europe by boat. So as soon as he stepped off that boat, he had his pilot's license back. Now, Douglas did live out the rest of his life staying in the aviation industry, doing various things here and there. But he did eventually, after the movie, bought Orange Grove in Southern California and lived out the rest of his life down there. He did pass away on December 9th, 1995, leaving behind a legacy of an adventurer and an enduring reputation as an aviator who took the wrong way to Europe. Now, if you asked me and wanted my opinion, yeah, he most definitely he did this on purpose. But I think he did it for his own personal satisfaction. He wanted to make something with his own hands. He wanted to do this as a goal, and he did it. But until the very end, if you asked him whether he meant it or not, that's his story, and that's mine. So hope you enjoyed today, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.